just love helping people get involved, because I can just see they come alive when we do that, you know, and we're gonna talk, I'm gonna just briefly mention just some of the benefits when we get people involved, but we'll be probably touching on all of those later, but it helps them feel like they're a part of something. You know, a person can come and sit in church and they may not show up and nobody knows and whatever, but once they start volunteering, their level of commitment to the church just skyrockets, and it gives them value. They have gifts in them. I believe everyone in our church has gifts, and when we get them involved, they begin to develop their gifts. They grow in their relationship with the Lord. They begin to form relationships with other people and find community. I mean, the benefits are endless, you know, so it's really a passion of mine to help people find a place they can get involved.
Yeah, so, yeah, you know, the staff would certainly be able to vouch for that. There's one of those things that's this table pounding value for Mary, for both of us, but for Mary is so much, we have to get people involved. We have to get people, how can we engage people in what's happening? So anyway, that's kind of what we'll be talking about today. We'll talk about some real practical steps, move into that, but before we even dive into that, I thought it might be good just to welcome the Lord into this time. I know He's present, but let's just take a moment just to pray. So Father, we thank You for this time. Lord, we know that You came to serve, Lord, not to be served, Lord, not to be ministered unto, but to minister, and to give Your life a ransom for many. And Lord, today we just welcome You, Lord. I know that sitting in front of us, and a lot of just, there's the volunteer staff, there's pastors, there's staff. Lord, we just ask that You would be present with us today. Pray that You would just help us to change the culture of our church to that one of engagement and allowing up, presenting and just allowing opportunities, Lord, forming those things, and then really serving as an expression of Your heart. So, Lord, just teach us today. Speak to us, I pray, guide Mary and I as we just open up some thoughts here today for all of us to think. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So the series, the title of the topic, again, just being a volunteer-powered church. So I think, what does that look like? I think it really starts with creating a culture of engagement and serving. And culture is not something that is found in a book. Culture is not, changing culture is not something that's found just at going to a conference. It's not found in a sermon series. I think culture is something that is really, that there's a process of changing a culture. And so one of the things that we want to do as a church is really engage this culture of like, when people come to Freedom Church, we want them to know that we have the big three. We want them to attend faithfully. Like, what does it mean to go to Freedom Church? We want them to attend faithfully. We want them to be involved in a small group. We want them to have a place of service so they can serve someplace. And so in doing that, I think the first step is this, that we have to bring our leadership along on this. And just help doing it, because it's not just, you know, our leadership team, but just as well as just our staff. There's a lot of ways you can do that. We talked, you know, I mentioned you can go to a conference, and like, oh, that's awesome. You can go, you know, preach a series. You can read a book, whatever. One of the things that we did is went through just a book called Connect by Nielsen Searcy. And I have it here. There's a lot of great resources, a lot of great books. This is the book, and I'm sure there's, you know, you probably read even better ones, but this one called Connect. And we started in September, and I think staff could help, I think it was maybe May by the time we got done with it. It was 9 months that we went through this book, and it wasn't just read chapter 5 and then come back and share a couple thoughts and we'll move on, but I mean, we just went through this book. This was my book. I mean, just like, okay, let's really talk about this. Let's do a deep dive on this. Like, how can we establish a culture of serving that when people come, this is what they're gonna do. And to be a part of it. And then after that, we went through this book called There's a Miracle in Your House. This is an old Tommy Barnett book. The whole premise of this book is that everything that you need to be successful is already in your church. You just have to uncover it. And so it was for us, at least for us, it involves so much in the area of serving. So what we need for, you know, Connect Group leaders that Pastor Jared leads, I believe we have those people. We just have to find them. We're not sitting here waiting for somebody to walk in the front door. When they do, we're going to get involved in serving as soon as we can. But we believe that we have everything that we need. And I know that was something that was really helpful for us.
We, you know, I was thinking about this. So we literally felt like we want to change the culture. And I think of Freedom Church to where this is a place that we serve. If you go to Freedom Church, you serve, like that's the culture of our church. And we had a lot of people serving till COVID, and then I know everybody probably had this very same experience. COVID came and we shut down, everybody shut down and went online, and then little by little, some people would come back, and then a few more, and some people that were very much involved in serving never came back, or they just stopped serving, or anyway, it was like starting over. Was it like that for everybody? Yes. And so I think it was at that point, probably, I don't know if it was about a year after the first outbreak of COVID, that we started this whole process. And I guess I would just say this, that we really felt like we knew, like, we will not make this shift alone. If one person in your church, and that's you, and you have a passion for this, that's amazing. It will impact your church. But how much better if there's a whole team of leaders, whether it's paid staff if you're in a larger church, or your lay leaders if you're in smaller churches. But everybody in leadership, they get it, like this is where we're going. So really, to change culture, I believe it has to be done as a team with all the leaders with the same vision, the same passion for where you want to go as a church.
Yeah,
And I think the books were a game changer for us as staff. Yes.
I think we all have different perspectives, which is not bad. I really embrace that. I think that's a wonderful thing. But when we sit down with the staff, and there's some that are viewing something from this perspective, another from this perspective, we're all talking about, serving, I think it's just invaluable. I think it's invaluable. So I think it has to be a priority. I think it starts with leadership. Say, do we really want this to be a part of our culture? If it does, then let's give it some really significant time. Changing culture, again, it's a process. It doesn't happen because we went to a conference. It doesn't happen because we just preached a sermon series. It's a culture shift. And so it begins with that. Secondly, I think it's important that we really establish a biblical foundation for what are we trying to do? A biblical foundation for it. And so we sat down as a staff, all of us, pastoral staff, office staff, custodial staff, bookkeeper, we sat down when we would go through this book, everybody on board. This is not just, a couple pastors thinking this is the whole staff. And what we did, we devised a biblical framework for serving. And so anyway, this is ours. This is ours. Maybe you want to help us pass those out a little bit? This is what we did. You don't have to do the same. You do whatever you want to do. But we wanted something, a reference point to say, this is why we're doing what we're doing. Here's the biblical foundation. And we identified 8 key truths or thoughts on the biblical framework for serving. Why are we calling people to serve? And so we'll take just a few moments to walk through this. Do we have enough of them? I think we should. I think I made quite a few copies of it. So we'll just kind of walk through this kind of briefly. Thank you. Number 1, serving is an indispensable part of becoming like Christ. So if you really want to become like Christ, it involves serving. You can't say, I want to be like Christ, but I'm not interested in serving. You can't say, I really want to, be more like Jesus, but don't talk to me about, I'm not going to serve. You can't do that. I mean, that doesn't work that way. You can't be like Jesus and not serve. So when we invite people to a place of ministry to serve, what we're actually inviting them to, it's a whole change of mindset. We're inviting them to become like Christ. When we ask somebody to be a volunteer to run sound, or they're going to run tech, or they're going to be, at the front doors greeting, we're saying, you know what, here's an opportunity. We're not looking just to fill a slot. We're looking for you to grow in your relationship with the Lord. And one way that you can do that, if you could stand at the door, like with a big smile, a hearty handshake, or hold one of our signs on a Sunday morning at the door, and when people come, that you can be the first step, the first thing they're going to see. So I believe this. Serving, it's an indispensable part of becoming like Jesus. And so we're going to give those people opportunities, to become like Jesus. And one of the ways is inviting them to be on a serve team.
Number 2 is serving means to minister. And so, I think when people hear ministry, they are thinking about the pastors, those who are paid pastors, full-time pastors. But literally, that's the definition of serving. And so one of the things that we really want to do is help all of our teams, whether they're running sound, running tech, on the hospitality teams, greeting and ushering and all that kind of stuff, coffee. You know, I think people get it that when somebody's up there preaching, they're ministering. When somebody's leading worship, they're ministering. But we really want all of our volunteers to know that they are a key to that they are ministering to, and that what they do is really just as important. It's just different, but it's ministry. And one of the, you guys, somebody said this yesterday, I don't remember if it was in a big session or a breakout one, but statistics say that within 3 to 5 minutes, people will decide if they come back to church again, and if they don't come back, they may never find Jesus. They may not make that decision their first time there. So to have people come back is actually helping them find the Lord. And so the hospitality team, truly, they are a huge part of ministry, because they will probably be one of the keys to the people coming back. And so helping your volunteers know that and feel like how valuable they are to what Jesus is doing. That's something we try to communicate with all of our volunteers, that they are so valuable and they're part of what Jesus is doing at our church. So.
Number 3, serving is the act of putting the needs of others before our own, which results in joy. So to serve, you gotta say, you know what, I could stay home an extra half hour and sleep an extra half hour. I could go out for coffee before Sunday morning service, but I'm gonna put those needs aside, and instead, I'm gonna stand at the door and welcome people. And that will result in joy.
Yeah.
You'll actually be more happy doing that. That's a biblical, principle. And so really, when we invite people to serving, we're inviting them to a life of selflessness, to think of others before yourself, and that will, that's going to result in joy. And in that, there just is. I think it's culture changing when there's that sense of joy. If the majority of our people come to church and they're like, okay, what do you got for me, Pastor? And all that. There's really not a lot of joy. But the whole culture of the church can change when people engage. And what happens is it becomes this culture of joy. Man, this is fun being in church today, because people are serving, and in that they're emanating this joy. And all we're doing is, could you stand at the door? Can you run sound? Would you be able to do that? Can you play keyboard today? And so the whole culture changes, and part of that is this thing of joy. And so that's why this is, such a big thing to us. And so, tomorrow at 8:30, our services, we have one at 9, one at 11. Jared, where will we be at 8:30 tomorrow?
I will be in Crookston, but you guys, but you guys will be for the sanctuary doing a volunteer rally.
Thank you. So we have another campus in Crookston, and so Jared's going there because Joel and Ellie, the Crookston campus pastors, are going to take a little vacation. So Joel, that's correct. But at 9:30, where will you be?
9:30, I will be at a volunteer rally in Crookston.
So one of the things we do at a half hour before the service, we gather all the volunteers together. It used to be like 5, 6, when we start, 10 volunteers. And now it's almost like continue. I mean, there's probably 30, 40 people, I would say. The worship team is there, the children's ministry team, pastoral staff, the coffee team. We have it's a welcome center, we call it Next Steps. The Next Steps team will be there. Security, sound, all that. And so Mary leads that part, and so she'll take 5 to 7 minutes just to talk about some encouraging word. We'll talk a little bit about maybe things in the service that are going to be taking place. And then we all come together, just like football teams, put our hands together, and we're like, all right. And,
count of 3.
Yeah.
I always forget. Nathan always reminds me. He's like, honey, you didn't. Oh yeah, let's go. Come together.
And so we'll say, like, I think last week Mary was not there last, but I had people say, go God, or freedom on 3. And it's just, I don't know, it's fun.
It's a lot of joy.
I enjoy it. I think the people do. There's just a sense of joy. All right, let's go, guys. We're ready to go.
Yeah, and the volunteer rally, just maybe couple little things. For us, what it did was it helped our volunteers. Hopefully they're going to be there for volunteer rally. That means they're going to be a half an hour early. They're going to be ready to go wherever they're at. Worship team and tech are already there, but But then it helps everybody see like, man, I'm a part of this big team of ministry, and it's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun, so, yeah. All right, that was what, number what, honey? 3. Number 4, when we serve others, God refreshes us. And Nathan kind of talked about that with joy. And I just want to encourage you not to be afraid to ask people, but to know like you're inviting them into something that they are going to be refreshed by it. I was thinking of a young couple who just moved to Grand Forks to go to UND, and they are from South America. And the husband, like literally the first time I met him, he wouldn't talk because he felt uncomfortable speaking English. He could understand it, but he could barely speak it. But both incredible musicians and really incredible hearts for God, and have been used in worship in their country. And anyway, now they are helping at the Crookston campus, both of them in worship, Rolando and Anna, and they just come alive. And they said, we want to do this. It refreshes us. Like, we want to do this. And so I just want to encourage you. I mean, we all know these aren't new truths. They're things we know. But that when we invite people into this, they will be refreshed. Their walk with Jesus will come alive. So.
I have a sister who lives in California, in LA, and she's an attorney. She's done very well for herself. She's a wonderful believer, and she sees her, and she says, I'm a pastor. Basically, I just do it under the guise of a minister. I do it under the guise of an attorney, though, because God loves justice. And so the number of people that she's helping is just incredible. It's really amazing. And so, I mean, just, multi-million-dollar lawsuits, and I mean, she's just done very well. And you know what one of the joys of her week is? She goes to Saddleback Church, where Rick Warren was the pastor. One of her joys, she'll call and tell me that she's single, is never married, is looking. So anyway, but I can throw that out there. Everybody's in the early 60s, but would like to be. But one of the joys is when she comes to Saddleback on a Saturday, and she's in the food. They have this drive-through food bank. People drive in their cars and they give them a box of food, and she'll call and tell me all the time about how that she loves it.
Wow, that's awesome.
And she's rolling with some kind of pretty, influential people. She's at a conference today, she's speaking, and she's always traveling somewhere speaking, and yet the joy of her week is serving food at a drive-through food bank at her church. This book that we talked about talks about a guy, an executive, I don't remember his joy. They had the book that talked about the Super Serve Thursday, where people come together and they just do just different events. Not events, but just different ways to serve. And people asked him, like, why do you come here? Because, I mean, you travel, and I don't remember all of his position. And he comes to fold bulletins every Thursday night. He says, you don't get it. This is the highlight of my week, to come and fold bulletins for our church. So, anyway, when we serve others, God refreshes us. Number 5, serving opens people's hearts to God, enables them to grow in their faith. When you invite somebody to serve, it stretches them. They're going to grow in their faith. I think of Pastor Jared with our connect groups, or the small groups we call them connect groups. Those people they're growing in their faith. Pastor Jared sees our altar teams, and we have people coming forward at the end of service to pray for people. Those people are growing in their faith. You can't stand in front and then have people start coming to you and whatever. You're like, okay, God, you gotta help me, because in this situation, just praying for them. And so I think it's an invitation for people to grow in their faith.
Number 6, involving people in serving as part of discipleship. And so our discipleship program's good, yes, class is good, yes, but when they actually get involved in serving, that's just another huge part. I mean, Nathan talked about that we can't be like Jesus and not serve. And you think about it, I just love thinking about different people who maybe, one young man in particular started coming to church, had been an alcoholic and done drugs and all that kind of stuff, came out of that kind of life. And I think he had made a commitment, but he jumped in probably with greeting, first of all. He said, I think the first time he came to church, he was like hungover and whatever, but really pretty readily wanted to serve. From that, he really became just like serving anywhere, everywhere, wherever you need me, I'll serve, I'll do kids ministry, I'll do this, I'll do that. And then from there, he became like a leader of, other volunteers, and then he's like, I wanna pursue ministry, and just, so it truly is like this, it's just one step at a time, leading people down the path that God has for them, and it opens the door for them. Who knows what the Lord's gonna do? Maybe they will, not that that's the end goal for everybody to be in full-time ministry, but it literally just starts with those small steps, so.
All right, number 7, the role of pastors and team leaders is to equip people for service. We know that. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through this, but I like what our staff has heard this on more than one occasion. I like what John Maxwell says. It's one thing when the people believe in the leader, but it's a completely different thing when the leader believes in the people. And says, I will take this ministry and I will give this ministry away. This is your ministry. I would rather than me doing it, I'm going to give it to you. And I think that becomes the seedbed for really effective ministry and a growing ministry. Because if the lead pastor is the one, or the paid staff are the one doing all the ministry, we're actually putting a ceiling on our impact. We're putting a ceiling on what can happen. But if we can envision, like our volunteers, those people attending church, and we can create a culture of engagement, a culture of service, what we're happening, we're removing that. We're removing the ceiling to our impact. And so this verse of scripture, very, very true. And I don't remember if the staff would remember this, but I think very early on, I remember thinking this as we sat at our staff table, our conference table in the conference room, looking at it, and I felt that I was a big part of it. I was the biggest, probably. I just felt like, I feel like we're always talking our need for volunteers. We need kids volunteers. We need all these things. And it's true. But I feel like one of the biggest hindrances to that is me. Because I'm not allowing that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So I think that is something we have to fully engage, just that our role is to equip people to do ministry. But let's give it away. Let's help them. And they probably won't do it the way we do it. And that's okay. That's okay. It's all the time.
I think if we can get this mentality that, and I know we all know this, but if the ministry of our church or whatever's kind of ministry you're in, is not about us. It is not about us. And the reality is, if Jesus doesn't come back before, someday we will not pastor Freedom Church in Grand Forks. We won't. We'll either pass away, we'll retire, or the Lord will say, like, I have another ministry for you guys. I want to move you somewhere. So that is the reality, that we won't always be there. And that's the reality for all your leaders as well. I mean, so if we can just know, like, this isn't about me, and what I want to do is I actually want to raise people up to do what I'm doing, to like almost work myself out of a job in a sense. Because if I'm, let's say, I'm overseeing the hospitality team, if I raise somebody else up to do that with me, and then they can do that, then it will flourish whether I'm there or not. And then I can give my time, my attention, and my energy to another area that needs to be developed. And so finding the people, allowing them, and that's our next one, serving is most effective as a team. Letting there be a team, not doing it alone, and trying to encourage. This can be a difficult, if people have we've seen where people have a very specific way they want this done, and they do not want anybody else to do it because they want it done that way. And they do it great, they do it well. But then the problem is there's nobody there when they are not able to do it anymore. Or, I don't know if people have this vision here, but I know in our hearts is to plant churches. So as you raise up leaders and people that are just flourishing in different areas, you're ready to go do it somewhere else then. You're ready with another team of strong leaders. I don't know if that makes sense. It's something we've talked a lot about because of just kind of where we're at with some things. But anyway, just really allowing people to not being, I don't know, I know there's some people that really can get their value from what they do in ministry. But trying to understand our value is not in what we do. It's not in us doing it all the time and doing everything. Actually, we do a service to allow the people to do it. Allowing them so that church is strong, those ministries, whatever area it is, are strong whether we're there or not.
So, again, this is ours. I think it's a great help in changing culture and moving to a, volunteer-powered church, to adopt your own and let it be just, because when it's your own, it's like, this is ours, this is just what we did. We sat down with our staff and just honed it out, and anyway, I think it works for us. So, really, step one we talked about was really just envisioning leadership, and then just a biblical foundation for serving.
So we were, to just recap, we were like, okay, shift the culture to having a church where everybody was serving. It has to start with bringing the leaders along. We did that with books. And then we also did it with this, kind of getting through all this. Then the next thing is bringing the church along. Like, okay, so great when the leaders get it, but we want to bring the church along, everybody in the church to understand this is where we're going. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that you get what you preach for. And so I believe that. So what I thought was really helpful, I don't actually remember the name of the series, but we did we took this and put it into 6, rather than 8 sermons, but 6 sermons. And went through a sermon series this past fall that was basically this, in sermon form. And so I love that, and would do that again, because I thought it was valuable.
it was huge, you think about, you want people to really get something, and so you preach on it, but maybe you preach it on it once, and then the next week you're on to something else. But what happens if you preach it, maybe on it from another perspective another Sunday, okay? They're gonna get it a little more. But after 6 weeks, like the people got it. It was so exciting, and we went, Nathan, I didn't see the actual numbers, but I believe we had about a 25% of our church attendance on Sunday morning volunteer for the first time.
First timers.
Yes, so like, we didn't just grow by 25% in our teams, but a quarter of people on Sunday morning that had not been volunteering after the sermon series started. So it was, we could tell like people really got a heart for it, and there was a culture shift in our church at that point. Would you say that? Yes, yes, so yeah.
Yeah. So part of that, I think, is re-envisioning or envisioning existing volunteers. And again, I think like the word need is not a good way to get people to say, we need this. We need kids or we need people to serve in a kids ministry. We need, because if not, I guess we kind of alluded to that a little bit, but, and so like this, one of the things he talks about is the 4-letter N word, the need word. And so rather saying, you know what, you know that 85% of people that accept the Lord do so before the age of 12. And so we have an opportunity for people to be involved in this ministry that's going to really change not only that person's life, but generations to come. And so we're inviting you to be a part of something that's really going to be very transformational in the life of a lot of people. And so it goes from just, we need this, because if we don't get, from need to like, here's why we're asking. Here's the value of this. And I think that's really an important part. How do we couch it? How do we say it?
Yeah. I'm really going to tell the stories of Bob and,
In time.
okay, all right, maybe am I ahead? I don't think I'm ahead of you. Just even existing volunteers, so with that big bump up of volunteers at our church, somehow too, like existing volunteers that have been all in, everybody has those people in your church, they're like always there, they're just awesome. But then sometimes they get used to like, this is what it looks like and this is how we do it. And so maybe helping them get this vision of like, actually, like this is where we're going. Maybe this is how we used to do it, and that's what got us by, but we don't wanna just get by. This is, in thinking about it in your mind, like what would the dream team look like on a Sunday morning, or whatever ministry you're thinking about, and helping your existing volunteers get that vision as well, I think is really key, especially if they're in leadership over a team or an area in your church, helping them see the value and just get on board with like we're gonna do it a little different. It's gonna look different, and it's gonna be awesome, so.
Yeah, so I think that we have to re-envision those existing individuals in the church. I think as well that we have to create entry points for serving. So if somebody wants to get involved, where will they get involved in the church? What are the areas? So I think create entry points. Sometimes people don't know that they're actually really needed. And so just, here's an area, then we found that, they said, well, I thought you had that covered. Like, well, no, there's lots of opportunity for you. And again, as pastors, leaders, we have to realize that our role is to equip people to do it. I think that sometimes pastors can have this tendency because there's a lot of positive feedback that comes back. Look how much people need me. Sometimes we can be a little bit borderline workaholics. And so I remember when we were left to mine as youth pastors, went to South Dakota, pastoring the church in that town of 650 people. And I remember that my role was to preach, my role was to counsel. I did weddings, numerous funerals. I led the board. I actually shoveled the snow. And I mowed the lawn. Okay, on top of that, I led worship. Okay, so it was basically,
Sorry.
Nathan Johnson Assembly of God, basically. Because that's just what I did. And I remember getting a little bitter about it, thinking like, this is not working. It's Saturday and I have not prepared worship. I got the sermon ready, but now I'm going to be leading worship, and I don't even know what we're going to do. I got to go to church now, and I don't want to go to church because I'm tired. And how is this going to work? And I felt the Lord say, Nathan, I've given you somebody that knows how to play the piano and very musical. I've gifted them. Like, oh, that's a great idea, God. That's a great idea. Give it away. I remember there was a man, his name was Bob. He had been injured. He was a paratrooper in the military. He had got injured in a jump, and so he was a disabled veteran. And I said, Bob, would you mind just mowing the grass on Saturdays? We had a riding lawnmower the church owned. He said, can I? I'm like, yes. And I mean, it was the highlight of his week. Like, I'm gonna come mow the lawn, can I? And he'd drive around his tractor, and put it away in our shed in the backyard. And I mean, he came alive, and I'm like, whoo, this feels good, because I'm not having to mow the lawn. Yeah. And I think I was standing in the way of that. And so we have to create entry points in all of that. I think of right now what's happening. Pastor Jared is overseeing, we call it the Freedom Cares Assistance, which is our benevolence. And so as well as Pastor Jared with Jeff. And they were doing a great job and have done a great job. But something I think really incredible happened, how many months, couple months ago?
Yeah, 4 months ago.
So they brought on a couple volunteers, and so Sharon is a lady that's retired of age. And I'm telling you, she's not real tall, but her heart's about as big as she is, it feels like. And then Preston is in his later 30s. I'm not sure what he does.
Real estate developer owner.
Okay, so real estate, I mean, these are sharp people, and so every Thursday morning, they come, we have a 9 o'clock meeting where we all pray together, staff, they come there, they participate in that. And then we have people, individuals from the community that come seeking rental assistance, seeking help with, utilities, food, gas, whatever it is. And to me, it's and Jared was doing a great job, and Jeff. But now we have these volunteers because these guys said, let's make some entry points for some people here to do what we're typically doing. And I mean, it's really amazing. Any thoughts on that, Jared?
Well, and finding those people stemmed from the sermon series that you did. And a really practical thing on the sermon series was we printed out, I don't know if we maybe talk about this.
Yeah, no, do it. That's awesome.
We printed out a big sheet of paper with probably 30 opportunities in the church. And so at the end of a sermon, we really called for, hey, we'd love for you to fill it out. If you've already serving and you want to explore another area, just check mark. If you haven't served in an area, check mark. And then we did a lot of follow-up with those people. We had probably, 100 cards turned in. And so that was a lot of follow-up work. A lot of Excel spreadsheets and how do we organize all this. But
that's a lot.
From that, the staff was ready for it because you took us through the book. So that's why having your leadership on board was helpful. But those two individuals came from that process.
That's so awesome.
they checked the box, and we interviewed them and talked to them, and they love it.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's such a blessing, because I mean, you're not doing as much as you used to.
Right, very blessing for me. Yeah.
That's awesome, awesome. You sure?
Go ahead, or I can go into recruiting.
Yeah, no, I think you should.
Okay, so, you know, that sermon series was a game changer, but there's still ongoing, always a need to recruit people, just ongoing. I just sat with a lady at Crookston Church, I was there last week, and we had a meal afterwards, which was so wonderful, and it just, you know, those are the times you can have a little more than just, hi, how are you, give a hug. And so a new lady coming to the church, just a wonderful lady, but has gone through a terrible ordeal, like in the news. I don't know, is it okay to talk about it? It was in the news. Her son was on drugs and stabbed her multiple times. And actually, our campus pastor, Joel, found her and called 911, was there through the whole thing. And she had just come to church the week before. So it's like the Lord put her, you know, thank the Lord, we had that connection already, put Joel in the right place at the right time. And then, anyway, she's coming in a part of our church with her family. It's just amazing. And she lived, and God spared her life. And anyway, but after going through all that, this is probably 6 weeks ago this happened? 5 weeks ago? Not very long ago. I don't know. Has it been, okay. She's like, I want to start volunteering. You know, like, and her daughter is probably a 20-some-year-old. She wants to start volunteering. It's like that. So, but just personally inviting people, you know, I had the chance to do that because we're just sitting, we're eating. Like, is there any area you guys would like? We'd love to have you be a part. And so we can put stuff up on a screen, we can have announcements, we can do whatever, but there's nothing that takes the place of a personal invite. So I just encourage you, just actively be inviting people. And, you know, what if 1 or 2 of us are doing that? That's great, but what if there's a team of 10 to 15 people looking prayerfully, just asking the Holy Spirit to lead them to be inviting people regularly into serving. And to me, that's really a key moving forward. We can't rely on that 6-week sermon series last fall, because there's going to be new people that are coming in, or people that still didn't have the courage to jump in. And so ongoing, that we are always just prayerfully looking for people and inviting them to be a part. I'll just say, you know, oh, it's so great to have you, and whatever. And if, when you're ready, no pressure, but if you're ready or you want to jump in, we would love to have you be a part of a team. We would just love it. Or maybe you recognize a gift that you are so good with kids. Would you ever want to help with the kids or whatever? But just, I know I've talked to different ministry leaders, especially lay ministry leaders, and different ones say, I cannot ask people. I just don't want, I feel like I'm imposing on people. It's like, it is, as we've said today, it's the opposite of that. It's inviting them into growth, and it's just really putting value on them. I was thinking this morning, I was just praying, you know, about all this and what the Lord would want to say to us. And I thought about my own story, and I would think every one of you here would have this similar story. Maybe not. Maybe you had a real, like, I know Pastor Jared had a time, like, at that moment God called him into ministry. And yet I would believe there were people along his journey who invited him in at different points to serve, that started creating the pathway for where he is today, you know. And I was thinking about that. I grew up western South Dakota, this small little town, small church, but an amazing church. But because I grew up with a very big family, and my sisters and I were extremely close in age, like literally less than a year apart, some of us. 4 girls in 4 years. So, then I was the third of the 4. And then 2 more after. And so, myself and another sister played the piano a lot. And that was really kind of our thing. We had excelled at. My sister, though, was a year older and very outgoing, and I was a quieter person. And so, growing up, I started playing piano for church in junior high, maybe. But then a few years later, my mom and dad went through a divorce, and I lived in Minnesota, where my aunt and uncle pastored. And I look back and I see, like, that really shaped some things in my heart. that I've had to overcome, but I literally was never once asked to play piano. Never. I was completely overlooked. And, you know, yeah, that was a wound or whatever, and past all of that. But it wasn't till we got married and I was in a completely different setting, away from all of that, that I began to have confidence again to step into that. And so that's just one little example. But then I was thinking about, we were 19 and 20 when we got married. 6 months later, we moved to help my dad on the ranch for 6 months before we went back to college. And the pastor asked us to lead a youth group. I mean, we're barely, you know, we're 6 months married. We are so young. I just turned 20. Nathan was 20. And so, I know it's a small little church, but we led the youth group. You know, all of those things, being invited into just different things like that, it really did begin to give us confidence to step into ministry. And so, I just guess I would just encourage you to think about, like, Lord, who are we overlooking? Because I know there's gifts in people in our church. And maybe there are wounds they carry, but they need somebody to see in them gifts and just invite them into whatever that is, so they can begin to grow in their gifts and grow in confidence, grow in the call that God has for them. So.
Yeah, and I think that the church is one of the things we see at church as a greenhouse, and that you can come in here and the atmosphere is going to be right for you to be able to grow. And I don't think that's ever more true than the area of volunteers and helping people to get to the place where God wants them to be. This is a safe place. You don't have to have it all together. The first time I was in youth group in Arizona, and the first time I spoke, so I've heard this before. First time I spoke, my younger sister came up to me with all these hash marks, like these 4 lines and a cross mark, and she just said, "Guess how many times you said you know?" I said, "How many?" And I spoke like 10 minutes. She said, 84 times. Thanks for that. Next time I was 56. I mean, I'm like, how's this going to work? How can I be a pastor? Like, I can't even talk. You know what I mean? I could have kept saying, you know. When we were in college, we were asked to teach a teen Sunday school class there used to be 2 churches in Ellendale, the college church and then the downtown church was called. So we were a part of the downtown church, and so we were leading this class. Do you remember that? And for some reason, as I was so nervous, sitting in front of these 5 teenagers, teaching them, and I'm studying to be a pastor, and my nostrils just start going, roar, they start flaring out of just anxiety. I don't know why what was going on. And we go home, and there's, was something wrong with your nose? You said you never even make noise.
You asked me, honey. I don't think you could anyway.
Wow, my goodness. I'm like, okay, great. This is going to be great. I'm going into ministry now. But people gave the opportunity, and I just think it was a safe place. And certainly not arrived in any way today, but I think we can give people that opportunity, and it's such a safe environment to do that. So you've heard this, I think, does this go to 11:15? Okay, so we have 8 minutes. So just one quick thing, and then maybe we can, if there's questions, we do have a couple of just some lessons learned, but we could talk about that. But one thing I think, and I'm sure you've probably heard this, but my father was an Assembly God pastor. That's all I've known. I grew up in the parsonage, and so in it, there's an old paradigm that says, when you believe like us, then you can belong to us. And nobody ever said that, but that was practiced. So you believe like us, okay, all right, now you can serve. Now you can get involved. And I feel that a wonderful shift over the years has been this, that you can belong. We want you involved. And as you belong, because of the interaction with the Christ community, you will come to believe. And so I think that's really significant. And I'm not saying you take those people and they're not leading worship on the first Sunday, they're not leading a connect group, under Pastor Jared. They're not doing those things, but they maybe are running a camera. And there may be, sometimes they're greeting, sometimes they're running slides. And when they get in that community, it's so exciting to watch that because they feel a part, I belong. And they come to faith as a result. And to me, personally, I don't know anything hardly more exciting than that. It's so exciting to see people come alive. in that. And, one of the young couples that leads that does the coffee ministry, the wife was coming, the husband is military, and he's coming. He's coming. I don't know where he's at in his faith, but he's coming. Really exciting. So anyway, we've talked a lot. We have a couple of things we could share, but just maybe the comments that you guys have, things that you guys are doing that's working well, or questions and anything on this whole topic.
One last thing I forgot that I had, I think, in my notes to say, but under recruiting, and you guys probably do this already, but we probably don't do it enough, but we want our people that are serving to know they can recruit themselves. Because they know, they'll have friends and family. I mean, like I think of that lady at Crookston, she has all kinds of friends and family from the Hispanic community and so allowing and just empowering our volunteers to be able to recruit as well is, I think, a big key to helping get people involved that we don't know.
They are definitely a part of the recruiting team. It's not just paid staff. Like, we want you guys to recruit for greeters. We want you to recruit for other people that can make the coffee. We want you to recruit the setup team or whatever it may be, for sure. Yeah. So is there comments or thoughts that you guys have?
Question. So what things when you're evaluating, like, here's the entry points, like, what are some more examples besides like coffee team or whatever that you guys use as entry points? And then or create a pathway for like, here's the next step. Okay, you wanna be more involved. Okay, here's was there a benchmark of like time? And obviously like discipleship is character, so like you work with them and just like, okay, I think you're ready. But like what pathway did you put out for them where it's like, hey, like you wanna serve more involved, here's this, So obviously there's some wisdom, but how did you approach the wisdom of like insulating, like you can't put them in kids ministry right away? You don't have background checks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So like what things did you do for entry point, and then what was the kind of path you built out for people to be more involved? As time went on?
It's a great question.
And Jared might want to share some too on this, but I think, like, there were those things that anybody could do. We have this food giveaway called Food Rescue on Thursday. We have piles of people come that help, and some don't even go to our church. And
Cool.
I know some are believers, but they love being a part of something like that. So there are those kinds of things. I think they naturally begin to maybe lead a team of volunteers or lead a small group. And then another step is we started an internship program. It's just like about a year into it. Would you say a year, Jared? Jared had set up. So when people are like, I really want to take this even to another level, then there's that opportunity. But I don't know if I'm answering your question very well.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. A little bit, I just kind of wanted like the path of where it's like, okay, we trust you more, here's the next place you can serve. Yeah, we trust you more, here's the next place you can serve. So that's kind of curious, like, so internship, yeah, like, that's kind of what I was wondering, like, what steps you kind of built for people to feel like, I can still move forward and have more ownership as they wanted to take it on, but in a sense of trust, because you don't just like give trust right away, especially with certain people like kids or whatever.
Yes, yes.
Jared, I don't know, I
Cool.
can talk about, do you want to, maybe just about the ladders of serving? I thought that was
Yeah.
something where we're really working on that. I don't know that we've got it, but in certain instances.
Yeah, so the ministries I oversee, especially connect groups, small groups, we are gonna encourage the leaders to think of a ladder, what's the first rung in the ladder for connect groups, it's just participation. And then the next one is maybe a serving area in the small group, like bringing snacks, hosting. And then at a certain point, we have marked out, you have to be a believer before you continue on. And that's pretty early, obviously, but it's not the first thing. And then to continue on beyond a certain point, you have to be a partner in our church, so to be a overseer of multiple groups and things. So we do have that laid out in certain groups or certain ministry areas. Not in all yet, so we're still working on that in a lot of other areas, but I think entry points are the greeting team, coffee, slides, camera. You could be setup team, food rescue, and I think we try to lean on the leaders of those, so volunteer leaders of those ministries. If you see people excelling, see people really interested, have conversations with them. We love to have you on the team. This is awesome. How are you feeling? And if they want to continue on, and we don't know if they're a believer, and that's a great, I think because they're already involved, it's a great conversation. Like, it seems like you're really thriving here. We love having you on the team. What do you think about this Jesus stuff? He really wants something more for you than than where you're at, and I think it's really easy to pour into them when they're already engaged.
Yeah, yeah. This book, really, it kind of it spurred a lot of our discussion in this area.
Yeah,
Because it goes really deep into the little ladders of involvement, so again, there's different rungs,
Yeah.
and each rung has some different requirements to step up in that ministry. Like small groups is a perfect example for that.
Yeah.
Anybody can attend. Anybody can bring snacks. You're stepping up, but then, right, but to be a co-leader, okay, you need to have a relationship with Jesus. And so, yeah, this book goes deep. I thought it did a great
Really
job
good.
talking about that.
That's really helpful, thank you. That answers all of that, so thank you very much. That was my question, was how do I develop that next step? It's like, you can serve, but that's like navigating that, so thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Monica?
You kind of have been mentioning, like, you communicate to your leaders this. When do you do that? Is that part of the volunteer rally that you do, or do you actually have another meeting where you get together with all your leaders of different ministries that are just volunteers, not staff?
Right. That's such a good question. We forgot we were gonna talk about team night too, but, so I would say, well, we used to have 2 big events in the year. One in the fall was a training night for all the teams, really envisioning, sharing our hearts, all that. And then a celebration in the spring, showing our appreciation. But we stopped trying to, it was too chaotic bringing all the volunteers and all the teams together on one night, and then everybody trying to find a spot in the church to like, it was just a bit chaotic. So like now we'll break it down to more like all the hospitality teams will have lunch after church on a Sunday, and then just really give our heart and vision for that ministry. I don't, am I answering what you're saying? But the volunteer rally, I think, is really a key, because we're just saying different little snippets every single week, kind of laying out
Like, you
vision.
bring in some of that page like, will you maybe highlight one of these areas at
That's
the
a great
volunteer
idea,
rally?
not necessarily.
Oh.
That's a great idea, though.
It's a really good idea,
But I was
Monica.
just wondering how you keep,
Well, I
how are
think-
you communicating your vision? Because you kind of said we talk to our volunteers to be recruiting others, or, I mean, do you, when, I
Well,
was
in the
wondering how you
volunteer rally,
communicate.
we'll talk about that, but I think we're really a great customer of Jimmy John's. And so like, if Mariah were here, our next gen pastor, I mean, when she's doing training, it'll be a Sunday morning after the second service at 12:30, and we'll bring in Jimmy John's, and to altar team, Jimmy John's.
They're our unofficial sponsor.
So, great question, but we do a lot of that. So, I mean, altar team meetings, small group meetings, Jared will have them come, we'll have a meeting after church typically, because they're already coming together. And then just what I'm, again,
So that's all your volunteers, or the volunteer leader?
that'll be more those specific areas.
Like a whole team, the leaders and the team of volunteers coming together, does that make
Okay.
sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, we are surely just still developing things, Monica, because there's, like, lots of different things I think we could just keep working, do better.
Mhm.
One of the things, though, that maybe I don't know if you guys have tried something like this, but it's probably been it's been the most fun thing we've done with our volunteers, is team night. We just are like, we wanna show them appreciation, that's all this night is about. And so the first Sunday night in May, we do it every year. And it's actually a night that the staff serves the people, and they don't do anything, and we serve them, and we provide them a full meal along with a theme. So like, we did Hawaiian, and then we did Mexican, and then we did, what was the next one? I don't remember, but then we did,
Baseball.
oh yeah, baseball, that was a fun one. So like baseball, like at the baseball game, and last year superheroes, this year the Old West, and so like literally like all the staff dresses up, they can dress up, but they don't have to, but then games and gifts for everyone, children are invited, it's a family event, and it's just been so fun, just bringing everybody together, and like the whole idea is literally to have a party, that's it, just have fun.
And for volunteers.
And to celebrate everything they do, and then we'll share like a couple, like maybe 5 minutes of our heart again, so maybe just laying it out there to
And I don't know how effective it is getting new volunteers, but I think it can be, because like Jared, as he's doing announcements, like we have team night, and so it's for all volunteers. If you've not volunteered yet, I like how he says, pick up some trash on the way out and throw it in the basket. You're welcome to come tonight. You're in. We want you to be there. You know, I love that, and so it is really fun. I mean, it's, last year we did the superheroes, and I went as Clark Kent, and I dyed my hair like completely, and then I couldn't get it out.
Oh, no.
He sprayed this stuff in his hair. It would not come out. He looks so.
It was nasty.
It's back to you, Pastor Daisy.
Nerd bowling.
Yeah, that's right. I had to put baby oil. The only I could get all out was baby oil. And then I had baby oil, and like I couldn't, the shampoo wouldn't cut that, so that didn't get done. But anyway, there's some questions over here.
Yeah, so your like team night, you actually do like promote it just during church, even to let everybody know.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
But my other question was, so when doing like personal recruiting, like when you said your team, does that mean your staff? Like your staff is required to like constantly be recruiting? And then also you ask your volunteers.
Yes, I
We
mean, we
would
want to.
hope that's how it's going.
Okay.
Maybe I think it'd be helpful with these two questions. All of our volunteer teams, we want a volunteer leader kind of over them, but every team has a staff report. So whether it's food rescue reports to our bookkeeper, who actually started it.
Right.
All our hospitality teams have a staff member overseeing that. We have a tech director, I'm overseeing volunteer teams. The security team has a leader, but he reports to Pastor Nathan. So at our staff meeting, the whole church is represented somehow, you know, to varying degrees. So obviously, depending on the size of your church, I think that depends on how many teams you can have, but for our church, our staff meeting represents the entire volunteer base. And so we get the memo out that way, and they report to their team leads, and they filter it down. So I think that's kind of how our
Right.
information gets passed down ideally, which has worked pretty well.
I think so, yeah. Is there a question? Do you have a question?
Mine was same as hers.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're a little late. Sorry, guys. But
No,
is
it's
there
great. Thank you.
Any questions? Again, I know it's been a real joy of ours, and it's so fun, and it's a process. The culture has been changing. That's been so fun to see. But again, it really is a process. So thank you guys for
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Good to have you.
Oh, yeah. I'm Drew,
Drew, where are you?
Northview of Fargo.
Okay.
I am a volunteer who helps lead other
Oh,
volunteers.
that's
Oh, wow.
amazing. That's
Just
so
a
neat.
guy.
We're so glad to meet you.
Oh,
Just
thank you.
just like just a guy.
Thank you.
That's not true. It's so good you're here. You guys are the ones that make a huge difference. It's awesome you're here. I love you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. It was great.